If we want to destroy college sports, let's just unionize, because that's exactly what would happen.
At a time when the nation looks to hit the field with its best, the team needs a coach. Today's guest is one of the best, the Honorable Tommy Tuberville, the award-winning football icon who turned in his headset to become one of the most watched play callers for America's future. In Washington, they now call him Senator, but for the rest of America, he's still known as Coach. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
We give you information, not a panic attack.
I mean, look what's going on. I mean, my God.
This was it. The kids were gonna die.
That time is gone forever.
This is the biggest story in America.
We weren't prepared for this.
Don't you want to speak truth to power?
Toughest thing I ever had to do.
Senator, so nice to have you on the show. A lot of things obviously are happening in Washington right now. Let's go right at it. There's a potential government shutdown if we don't get the budget approved by September 30th. Just to use football terms, I can't help myself. Do you think to get this home, are we looking at a draw play or a Hail Mary?
Well, when you're working with the Democrats, it's pretty much a Hail Mary because they're trying to do everything they possibly can to keep us from getting things going in the right direction. They want a shutdown of the government. They think it helps them. They don't do anything to help. This is all Republicans in the Senate and the House trying to get this done. It's just a mess up here. It really is. You know, I hate it for the American people, the taxpayers of this country. We're $33 trillion in debt, and these people want to continue to spend money, $2 trillion more than we're budgeted for. But elections have consequences. And for those of you that voted for these people that are running the show up here and supposedly running our country, well, you voted for them, and they're running it. They're running it right in the ground. And we better grab a hold and hold on, because we've got another year to keep up with this mess. And hopefully we can get some sense of reality and help the American people. But it's hard when you have we really don't have a chip in the game. It's just all Democrats.
Senator, you and Senator Joe Manchin co-authored an incredible piece of legislation called the PASS Act of 23. And let me just read what it really is designed to do. It's supposed to protect the interests of athletes and the integrity of college sports. Tell us what's in this bill. I know it has to do with name, image, and likeness legislation and having a consistent approach to that across the states. Why is this so important? And how does this play into the whole context of how all of college sports, Senator, especially college football, has changed?
Joe Manchin and I have been working on this going on 2 years, to be honest with you. And it's been long, drawn out. And of course, this is my forte. I was in college sports for over 30 years, 35 years. And it's a great avenue for a lot of young men and women to get an education, number one, to get the scholarships paid for. But at the end of the day, that wasn't enough. A lot of these players said, hey, we want money. We see all the money that's coming in. And I'm fine. I'm fine with players making money. But Joe and I got together and said, listen, this is not about the money that players are getting, but it's also about keeping the integrity of sports, what they're learning, going to college, and also getting an education. What an idea, right? Getting an education through all this. So we have brought in people from all sports, athletic directors, coaches, parents, student athletes, administration. And this is not our bill. This is a bill that we put together by learning the good and the bad and the ugly of what's going on for the past couple of years through the NIL. The Supreme Court said they can make money. And I'm telling you, Joe Manchin and I are all for athletes making money. But there's got to be some rules that go along with this to where we can keep the integrity of the game and education the number one priority through sports. But we also don't want to tear down women's athletics and the Olympic sports, the non-revenue sports, so to speak.
Right.
We want to make sure we have money to pay for that. And so we put in 4 or 5 things that we felt like were basics. That's a blocking and tackling of college sports, so to speak. And if you can't block and tackle, you can't win. And so we want all 50 states to go by these rules. And for us to be in it federally, we're the only ones that can do that. So again, make money, but you got to get there first. You got to prove your worth once you get to that location or that university. And we're trying to protect the student athletes along with trying to protect the game as we go. In some states that go out and they can offer a ninth grader $100,000 a year and say, we'll give you that. And when you get to graduation time, we want you to come to our school. There's no fairness in that. And it's also getting in the way of education and ruining high school athletes the same way that we're tipping the balance on college athletes.
Senator, who would be against this bill? I mean, the fact that you have Senator Joe Manchin on the other side of the aisle is pulling with you, is there any argument against the consistency here about trying to infuse college sports with more integrity and to look after the interests of the student athletes?
Well, it's like everything else up here. You got the Democrats. They've got a different ideology about what they want out of this. They're not looking for the protection of the sport or protection of Title IX. They want to unionize. They want all college athletes to be able to be individual contractors and unionize. And if they want to go on strike, they can go on strike. But they're looking for better benefits and all those things. I can understand that possibly once you get out of college, but if we want to destroy college sports, let's just unionize, because that's exactly what would happen. We'd make minor league sports out of these teams. We would lose a lot of the smaller sports, a lot of the non-revenue sports, because there wouldn't be enough money to support them. That's what the Democrats look at. They're totally in on individual contractors and revenue sharing. Now, I'm not against revenue sharing. I think everybody should make a little bit of money, but we got to be sensible about this, because if all the money goes to the athletes and none goes to the sports to keep them above water, then we got huge problems.
You mentioned Title IX. Title IX is 37 words that are enshrined probably in every athletic director's office in every university in America. And few of those words talked, Senator, about the resistance or fighting discrimination of people in programs that are funded by the federal government. Discrimination. Well, I want to play you a clip from a report having to do with Riley Gaines, this incredible swimmer. Her father was a football player from Vanderbilt. Mom played, I think, university softball, just true blue, straight out. And it's, I think, almost criminal how she's being treated as she tries to kind of raise the flag of what seems to be common sense. Let's play the clip.
Riley Gaines posted video on Twitter last night saying she was confronted by a trans rights activist. Gaines is a former competitor of controversial trans swimmer Leah Thomas. Gaines says police escorted her to safety and that she was forced to barricade for 3 hours in a classroom. The university says police did not make any arrests, but that it is conducting an investigation. The attack happened after Gaines spoke last night to students at a Turning Point USA event at SF State. She says she is not against transgender athletes competing, but believes they have an unfair advantage in women's athletics, and there should be more dialogue about how to make athletics more inclusive.
I mean, you're seeing here, Senator, Riley Gaines under siege, and it really leads to my question about your piece of legislation called the Protection of Women and Girls in Sport. What does America need to understand in terms of giving women athletes a real shot to compete and all the costs that are involved and not allowing for that?
I've got a good relationship with Riley. She's done a great job on this topic. It's unfortunate. She trained all of her life to win a national championship like this, and last year she had to compete against somebody she couldn't beat in a month of Sundays. It's unfair. And you ask why they're doing this. Well, they're trying to take gender out of this country. They don't want man, woman, or anybody. That's the reason this trans movement is on right now. They want to just eliminate the thought of anybody having to stay one gender, so to speak. And listen, I'm for everybody. I love this country. And if you live in this country, you can be what you want. You can be a giraffe if you want to. I don't care. But it all comes down to being fair. And biological men or boys playing in women's sports, there's no fairness about that. And it's dead wrong. And I can't believe we're having to talk about this. And I can't believe people are actually for this, that's saying, I believe this is fair. I've even asked some of my Democratic colleagues, do you not have a daughter in sports? Do you not have a granddaughter in sports? Where's the common sense to this? There's not any. It's about ideology, and it's about changing this country to something that it's never been. President Obama said years ago, I'm President of the United States, I'm here to transform the United States. Well, they're doing it, and they're doing it with Joe Biden now, with his term here in the White House. They've done everything to attack Title IX, to attack sports, to bring this country to something that it's never been. And that's exactly what's going on right now. And I hate it. I hate it for everybody in our country, but I hate it for our youth and really the women in sports that want to compete Because if men or boys are allowed to compete against girls, it is not fair. And we can find somewhere else, as Riley said, for them to compete against each other. If you want to transition, hey, go ahead and do it. That's your prerogative in a country that gives you free speech and free movement. But don't push it on somebody else. That's not what this country's about.
This takes me right into something you've been fighting for recently, gotten a lot of press about, having to do with Department of Defense funding of abortions and the confirmation of military personnel that are awaiting confirmation in the United States Congress and Senate. What led you to this position where the White House, of course, issues a directive that subverted a law that's been on the books since the early 2000s, which allowed for, by the way, abortion funding if the life of the mother is in play, even if in facilities, to allow for abortions if it's a situation involving rape and incest, as well as life of the mother. You've called this abortion tourism.
Well, first of all, I got two problems with this. Number one, I was voted in Alabama as a representative to the Senate for all the taxpayers of the state of Alabama. 1984, Joe Biden and the Democrats voted for this policy and bill to be in place in the military that you can have an abortion for the three exceptions: rape, incest, and health of the mom. There's been no problems with that. There's been a few abortions every year. Nobody's complained about it. But after Roe Wade went down, the Biden administration said, we can't control the states, but we can control federal employees. So they started putting out abortion policies in all areas of the federal government. They did it first with the VA. I fought it. I lost on a vote on the floor. Our Democratic colleagues decided they wanted abortion in the military, which we've never had. But now we have it. The second thing was they said, okay, we're going to handle the military now that we've got finished with the VA. So with a memo, instead of sending a law over and say, okay, would y'all pass this? But the way it did in 1984, they said, nah, we'll just change this with a memo. Last I looked, we're not a communist country. We don't have a dictator supposedly running the White House saying, okay, we're going to do it this way. We could care less what the people of this country think. This is a very controversial issue, okay, when you talk about abortion. Everybody in the country should have a representative vote for their thoughts on anything to do with this. And so that's the reason I said, listen, the only thing I can think of is I'm going to hold your generals and admirals up until you give me a vote in Congress on this. We're not going to dictate. We're going to vote on this. So it's been a standoff for close to 220 days now. We have not had any promotions. Chuck Schumer is just basically set on this, and they're trying to say, listen, Coach is holding this all up. It's all his fault. No, it's not. It's the fault of this administration, the Pentagon, trying to legislate, from the White House and the Pentagon instead of letting Congress do their job.
So you recently added something that I think in the Defense Authorization Act having to do with foreign ownership of land, specifically farmland. Farming and agriculture has become a critical national asset for this country. How does China having increasing ownership threaten our national security? And how would this piece of legislation kind of put us back on the right road to domestic control of our fate?
Well, this is really a no-brainer. This shouldn't even be political. This should just be a law that, hey, we do not want to sell our land in this country to foreign investors, especially China, are one of our adversaries. And 12 years ago, they had, I think, 10,000 acres of land that they own in the United States. Well, that's too many. Well, now they're approaching 400,000 acres.
Wow.
And China's our adversary. They'd like to be the number one superpower in the world. They got problems, too. Their economy's bad. They're looking for ways to up their economy. Their president wakes up every day going, not whether they're going to go to Taiwan or not. He's waking up every day figuring out, how do I feed 1.4 billion people? Where am I going to get the food? Well, they're buying farm land in the United States. That's a pretty good start. And so we have to stop that. We have to be self-sufficient in our country. We found out during COVID that we don't make any drugs. They're all made in China. And we better start moving it back. President Trump tried to, but it did not happen. We've been fighting all kinds of regulations. Now we're doing the same thing for food. If we're not self-sufficient in food, and even some of the Biden administration said, we need to get rid of farmers. We need to get our food somewhere else. These people have lost their mind. They're absolutely nuts. They have no common sense. We need to be self-sufficient. You never know what's going to happen around the world. We need to take care of our own business and not rely on anybody else.
Now I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to call you Coach
Please.
for this question.
Please.
Your first coaching assignment was not in football. It was for a high school girls basketball team. Tell me about that. How was it coaching girls basketball in high school? And do some of those lessons still, live with you today, even after all your, kind of Hall of Fame years as a football coach?
You can have all the training you want in college, take all the courses in sociology and psychology. When you get out and you go to coaching men's football, which I did coach, but also girls basketball, you got to have all your resources there and reach out for experience from other people, because there's a different problem every day. I enjoyed it. It was different because I'd never been around girls sports, but I had to coach it. Right. And it was great. I made some great friends, still have some of the girls that I coached back then that reached out and send pictures of their family and kids and all those things. It's been a long time ago, but it was definitely a learning experience, and it taught me about Title IX. That's pretty much Title IX started a few years before that.
Right. And
man, have I seen girls and women's athletes grow because of Title IX. Now they want to tear it down. Same people, the activists that were out there saying we need women's sports, we need to stand behind women, which was they were actually right. And it really did a lot of things to make it fair for men and women to have the same facilities and coaches and the funding for sports. It has done so much for women and leadership across this country. Now they want to tear it down. The same activists want to go and say, okay, we want boys to be able to play in women's sports. And it's just so detrimental to anything that's been built up in the last 50 years in Title IX.
So, Coach, you obviously had a legendary career as a football coach at Auburn. I think the records speak for itself, the 13-0 year in 2004. I want to go back before then when you were defensive coordinator for the University of Miami Hurricanes. And specifically, some of my football heroes, Warren Sapp and Ray Lewis and The Rock, that you coached when you were at the University of Miami. Do you still stay in touch with them?
Yeah, some of those. You never know what the future is going to bring. I can remember when Dwayne Johnson, now called The Rock, came in and was a defensive lineman for us. And I talked to him early about his goals, and he told me about some of his family had been involved in wrestling, and in future he might want to get involved in it. And it paid off very well for him. Warren Sapp actually was a tight end, 220-pound tight end. That's right. For us at University of Miami. And I told Dennis Erickson, if you'll let me talk this young man into moving to defense, we'll have a great defense next year. And of course, Ray Lewis, I recruited Ray personally out of Lakeland, Florida, and Kathleen High School. And he was a quarterback, running back, safety. And Ray made himself into a football player. I mean, it just goes to show you, if you have the work ethic and desire to achieve, you can put your hard work and effort into that. And if things fall the right way, Ray wasn't the best athlete in the world or the fastest. He was the smartest. He really understood athletics. He watched more film than anybody on the football team. And I had those two guys at tackle and Ray at middle linebacker. You didn't run on the Miami Hurricanes back then. It was very hard to run. So we pretty much knew that we'd have to have good defensive backs and a good pass rush.
What lessons could people in public service, elected office, et cetera, take from sports? I mean, you lived a better part of your life experiencing that, right on the front lines. What lessons are there that sports still continues to give us in terms of leadership, in terms of character, that could help serve as kind of a guidepost for those who are representing us in government?
Well, I've always understood that, organization is the key to winning in anything that you do. And you have to be organized, just not on your actions, but your thoughts for the future. You have to have a plan. You hear about goals and all that, but you have to have a plan in life. If you just kind of haphazardly hit things around, it's like, for instance, we just talked about Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne knew what he wanted to do. He played a year or so of pro ball, but he knew that he wanted to be a wrestler. And that was his goal. And every day he worked towards, after practice in football, he lifted weights and worked on his body to look like a wrestler. So you have to have that plan. But leadership, and if we talked about Title IX and women, look at the leaders that we have in our country now that have come from the opportunity to play, whether it's junior high sports, high school sports, or college sports, the leadership and the teamwork and the work ethic that all brings, and the understanding of how to deal with other people and problems. Sports is one of the things that has made this country great. If you look at two things that has been consistent with us to make leadership in our country, it comes from sports at all levels, and it comes from our military. Now, what concerns me is both of those now are being attacked from a woke left that's trying to infiltrate, the things that we teach. and the things that we try to push on our kids to become better, make themselves better as individuals and as teammates. And the same thing in the military. Our military, and as I tell people, listen, our military is not an equal opportunity employer. Don't give me that it's for everybody. We want the best, the brightest, and I don't care who you are. If you're an American, you can be a great person in our military, because if we do not have the number one military in the world, everything that we have, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our Declaration of Independence, all the things that we've always depended on, they're in danger of being extinct. And it all starts with protection of our military. And it just scares me to death, the direction that both our sports are going right now, as we talked about with the NIL, and with the direction our military is going, as we talked about the holes that I'm having, that these people are trying to implode the things that we've done over the years from within. And we've got to get back to American values, moral values in everything we do, especially in those two things.
Senator, we're so happy. I think sports fans are not happy you left football. I think America's happy you're now on a different playing field, in a lot of ways a bigger playing field, not just for the country, but for the world. Good luck. I think what you're fighting for is very important for all of us, and especially your remarks on Title IX and women in sports. I applaud you for that.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
The Auburn Tigers have come to Knoxville, Tennessee, and manhandled the Volunteers 34-10. Paint these checkerboards orange and blue. How about them Tigers?
Remember to subscribe today and hit the bell so you never miss another episode of the show with that trademark opener from Washington, D.C. It's 13th and Park.